I saw these last night. And I'm somewhat familiar, but I will really encourage folks to reference the, I think Heather has the hyperlink, but there's a website on the bcorporation.net website where B Lab has pulled together a number of resources for educators. But I think Heather really wanted to start the conversation talking again about the theme of this year's retreat and this idea of interdependence across sectors, interdependence across disciplines, and to really, I think, highlight the importance of the academic community in that vision for really scaling the B Corp movement. And I know everybody had a chance to have a conversation with Bart yesterday, and it sounds like that was a very productive conversation. But I think there is, as you'll see, certainly support from B Lab and supporting the academic community. Although I think on one of Heather's slides, she does say limited support, as I know you heard from Bart as well. So B Lab does say that there are hundreds and hundreds of educators out there who are teaching business as a force for good, doing research, studying B corporations, building B impact teams. And so we're still trying to capture all of those educators. And so that's been a process. But as I mentioned, B Lab has developed, if you haven't yet been to this website, I'm going to show a snapshot of the website in the presentation I'll be doing later on B impact teams. But you can go to bcorporation.net/educators, and there are a number of tools and resources, case studies, videos, research papers that B Lab has pulled together to provide teaching resources for educators. I'll mention in a minute another resource, which is a new tool that B Lab has developed. That's a referral tracking opportunity, mostly for those who are building B impact teams as well as B local communities. And so as I mentioned, here's an example of some of the resources that are featured on that bcorporation.net/educators website. So sample syllabi, although I'm sure there are many syllabi, I think including some of the courses that we'll be talking about this morning, that are not yet included there. Examples of B impact teams, and so we'll share 3 different examples of B impact teams that are highlighted on the educators website later this morning. Examples, archives of books, case studies, trainings for students on the B impact assessment. In fact, on this website, there's an incredibly rich repository of slides and essentially tools that will take both companies going through the B Corp certification as well as students who are interested in learning more about the B impact assessment. Will essentially take students through each of the different components of the assessment and kind of walk students through the process of completing the assessment and kind of walk students through each of the different components of the assessment in great detail. And so there's actually a very rich repository of information on this website. How many of you are on the B Corps on Campus LinkedIn group? Okay. So it might be interesting as part of our discussion after the long break about whether that's a useful resource, but there is a B Corps on Campus LinkedIn group that I think has 200 or so people who are part of that LinkedIn group. I don't think it's very active at this point, so it might be interesting to discuss, again, how useful of a tool that is. Of course, Heather wanted to highlight that as part of the academic community, we have been having monthly conference calls. How many of you have been on one of the monthly conference calls that we've hosted on different topics, sharing best practices, sharing resources? And of course, there's this annual in-person gathering. Yes? Come to this event and you are on the list for future calls.
We have a member from the online community asking, how can my school be included in that list of academic partners?
For the online calls or for the list of academic partners on B Lab's website? I would encourage them to contact Heather. I'll pull up her contact information, is on the last slide, but yes. So Heather will be the contact to be included on B Lab's educator website, or for any questions related to B Lab's educator website. Great question. Thank you. And of course, so who's at the annual in-person gathering? Everybody? Yay. So those of you who can't join us this time, those of you who are joining us remotely, hopefully you can join us in person for future if the decision is that we will continue to have annual in-person gatherings. But that's certainly another resource of the academic community that B Lab does help us to facilitate and to organize. A new resource that I'm not sure if actually it's listed on the educator's website yet or not, but as I mentioned, there is that toolkit of resources that can be used as a tool to kind of help students walk through the different components of the assessment. And so that's been recently updated. So if those of you who have used that toolkit in the past, it was a little bit dated and didn't kind of match the look and the feel of the new version of the assessment. So just in the last few months, that toolkit has been updated. And B Lab has developed a new tool they're calling, I think, their promotional partner tool. And so essentially what it does is it's a unique referral URL. So you can see an example up there, bimpactassessment.net/yourschool. And what this referral tool does is allow, if you're working on a B Impact team, or if you're working with a network of companies that are either working through the assessment or that have completed the assessment, it allows you to give a company working through the assessment that unique referral link. And at the end of the assessment, essentially they can select for your university to have access to the data in the assessment. I believe it's just aggregate data, but for that set of companies you're working with. So for example, we work on B Impact teams. Every semester we work with 5 to 8 companies. And so we have not used this unique URL yet, but what it allows us to do is to give that link to the companies we're working with through the clinic, and allows them to self-select to be able to allow us to have access to the data in their assessment as they're completing the assessment, if they become certified through certification. So we can look at over semesters, over multiple semesters, over multiple years, we can look at the results of their assessment in aggregate. And so it'll be interesting, maybe as part of the discussion, to hear about whether this is a useful tool, how other academic institutions might use this tool. But this is a brand new resource that B Lab has developed. I've asked for our own unique URL and have not yet gotten it. That's how new it is. So if you're interested, again, it's certainly contact Heather if you're interested in learning more about the unique URL, if you're interested in getting a bimpactassessment.net unique link for your academic. I don't think it's on their website yet. This is brand new. Right, so yes, I think there's an introduction to their B Analytics tool, but one of the things that Heather did mention is it does not provide you with access to the B Analytics tool itself. So this is a free resource, but there's a cost associated with getting access to B Analytics, but it sounds like there'll be training related.
They'll have you at the introduction to learn. I think that's their hoping that you can one of the analytics.
Okay, so there's I don't know if everybody can hear, but it's essentially there's as part of the training for this unique URL, there's training for the B Analytics tool, and sounds like the hope is that academic institutions will then get access to the B Analytics tool. Thank you. Let's see, I think that might be, and so I think this is just an example of what it might look like with that unique URL. And so essentially companies are going to the same assessment that everybody else is taking. It's just, porting them to a unique URL that allows you to get access specifically to the companies that are using it through your URL. Let's see.
Jessica,
yes.
Do you know, is that the full impact assessment, or is it the measurable on that kind of short version?
My understanding is it's the full impact assessment. Mm-hmm. And so I think lastly, what Heather wanted to highlight are a couple examples, right, of how you might be able to use that unique URL tool. And one example might be, I don't know if anybody has actually worked on this initiative with B Lab, but B Lab I know has an initiative to work with universities and give them, I think through the B Analytics tool, but access to essentially allow their suppliers to take the B impact assessment and to be able to look in aggregate across the scores of a university's supply chain. I don't know if anybody, we have not participated in this program. I don't know if anybody in the room or on the webcast has worked with B Lab through this, project to essentially look at the impact across the university's supply chain. But it sounds like this could be one application of the unique URL, I'm assuming paired with the B Analytics tool. And then certainly working with B Local. So on Tuesday, I don't know, is anybody, where's Jerry? Yeah, so I don't know if you want to say, I think I've got 2 more minutes, but a little bit about, I don't know if there's any discussion about the B Locals meeting that happened on Tuesday earlier this week, but I think there's an opportunity for B Local communities to collaborate with academic institutions to use this unique URL to essentially look at, measure in aggregate the B impact assessment across local B Corp communities.
And there's a good desire for the local B Corps to connect with higher ed, and I know there's not always a great way to do that. There's not even a listing yet of what all the B locals are. Those are certainly initiatives early, the end of this year, early next year. But if you want to do any kind of connections, feel free to reach out to me, and I can be the conduit because I'm involved.
Excellent. So, and I think that can certainly be maybe something else to flag for the conversation after the break, is thinking about how we can connect those local communities of B Corps that are self-organizing with the academic communities in similar geographic areas.
It's small enough number now, it's not too big a deal.
Yes, good time to start. So I believe that is it. How are we doing? And I'm cut off anyway. Heather is cut off. And so here is Heather's contact information. She did encourage people to reach out to her if you have any questions about any of the resources that B Lab does provide. Heather will be at the Be Inspired Talks and at the Street Festival. So if anybody really does want to connect with Heather in person, let me know and I can try to help facilitate that connection later this afternoon. Sound good? All right, so with that, I will invite up Emilia Correa with Academia B to share our next presentation and share with you some of the resources, some of the really incredible resources that are available through Academia B.